The weight of steel. The KAR98k rifle hangs in the morning air like a question mark, its steel barrel catching the pale Austrian sunlight filtering through Stalag 17B's watchtowers. Staff Sergeant Jake McNasty McNiece doesn't look up from the fence wire he's been ordered to repair, but he feels the weapon's presence the way a man feels thunder before the storm breaks. 3 weeks since his capture near Bastogne, and Oberst Heinrich Kessler has made this rifle part of their daily ritual, a twisted dance of authority and resistance that starts each dawn with the metallic click of the bolt sliding home. McNiece arrived at this prisoner-of-war camp, stripped of everything except his stubborn defiance and the knowledge that the rifle now pointed at his neck once belonged to a young Wehrmacht soldier he'd killed during the Normandy invasion. Kessler discovered this detail during his initial interrogation, when McNiece refused to provide anything beyond name, rank, and serial number. Since then, the weapon has become the commandant's preferred tool of psychological pressure, sometimes a club striking fence posts for emphasis, sometimes a cold reminder resting against McNiece's spine while he works. The morning routine never varies. Kessler appears carrying the KAR98k with its stock marked by scratches, each mark representing a confirmed kill according to German tradition. He orders McNiece to perform menial tasks while the rifle hovers inches away, a constant reminder of captured defeat and present vulnerability. Other prisoners watch these encounters with growing fascination and dread, whispering that McNasty has lost his mind, that he should just break already and give the commandant what he wants. But McNiece understands something they don't. Each time that Mauser appears, he sees the young soldier who once carried it, probably no older than 19, conscripted from some Bavarian farm, trained to kill Americans he'd never met for reasons he barely understood. The weapon connects him to a broader truth about this war. Everyone involved has been marked by violence, changed by necessity, reduced to fundamental questions of survival and dignity. Private Tommy Riggs, captured alongside McNiece during their failed demolition mission near Bastogne, recognizes something deeper at work in these daily confrontations. He sees how his sergeant's refusal to submit gives other prisoners permission to resist in smaller ways, pocketing extra bread, helping sick comrades, maintaining military bearing despite circumstances that strip away everything except what a man chooses to hold inside his chest. The psychological toll accumulates slowly, like water wearing down stone. McNiece begins experiencing nightmares where the rifle's previous owner appears, speaking German words he can't understand, but somehow recognizes as pleas for mercy. He wakes, remembering the moment he killed that young soldier, a split-second decision during house-to-house fighting in Carrington, necessary for mission success but haunting in its personal immediacy. If stories like this make you imagine what you'd do under fire, tell us in the comments how you think you'd react in this situation. And stay with us for the next chapters. Winter deepens around Stalag 17B like a slow siege, bringing dysentery, frostbite, and the persistent hunger that makes men dream about their mothers' kitchens while gnawing on turnip soup. The Austrian countryside beyond the barbed wire disappears under snow that muffles sound and makes the world feel smaller, more intimate, more dangerous. Red Cross parcels arrive sporadically, and McNiece watches Kessler distribute them according to his own twisted logic, rewarding compliance, punishing defiance, always with the KAR98k somewhere in the frame. The rifle has become more than a weapon or tool of intimidation. McNiece realizes it serves as Kessler's psychological crutch, a prop that transforms a middle-aged Austrian officer into something more commanding. Without the Mauser, the commandant seems diminished, uncertain, just another tired man in a grey uniform watching his war collapse around him. With it, he becomes the keeper of life and death, the arbiter of dignity and degradation. During morning work details, McNiece notices how Kessler's hands move on the rifle's stock, fingers tracing those kill mark scratches with something approaching reverence. The German speaks to him in careful English about proper respect for authority, about the natural order of victor and vanquished, about lessons that must be learned through repetition and humiliation. But his voice carries an undertone McNiece recognizes from his own nightmares, the sound of a man trying to convince himself that what he's doing serves some larger purpose. Private Riggs develops a fever that won't break, shivering through nights when the barracks temperature drops below freezing. Other prisoners share what warmth they can, huddling together like animals, while guards patrol outside with dogs and flashlights. McNiece finds himself checking on his friend during the small hours when sleep won't come, listening to Riggs mutter about home, about the mission near Bastogne, about whether they should have taken a different approach to that German roadblock. The memory of their capture plays in McNiece's mind like a broken film reel. They'd been tasked with destroying a bridge that carried German supplies toward the Ardennes, but intelligence proved wrong about enemy strength and positioning. Instead of a lightly defended span, they'd found prepared positions and alert sentries. The demolition charge McNiece carried, enough TNT to drop a steel girder into the river, never got close to its target. During afternoon interrogation sessions, Kessler probes for details about American demolition techniques, unit strengths, and operational methods. He rests the KAR98k across his desk like a paperweight, occasionally lifting it to examine the action or clean the barrel while asking questions McNiece won't answer. The ritual has become comfortable for both men, predictable questions met with predictable silence, the rifle serving as silent witness to their stalemate. February arrives with news that filters through the camp's unofficial intelligence network. Whispered reports from new prisoners, fragments overheard from guards, and the subtle signs that suggest larger forces moving beyond the wire. American bombers appear more frequently overhead, flying in formations so vast they darken the sky for minutes at a time. German guards seem more nervous, more prone to sudden anger, more likely to enforce petty regulations with excessive force. McNiece learns that Allied forces have crossed the Rhine in several places, that German resistance is collapsing faster than anyone expected. The knowledge brings hope mixed with anxiety. Liberation might come soon, but desperate men make dangerous decisions, and prisoner-of-war camps have been known to disappear entirely when their guards feel cornered. The KAR98k begins to feel less like a tool of daily intimidation and more like a loaded question about what Kessler might do when American tanks appear on the horizon. Private Riggs takes a turn for the worse, his fever spiking to dangerous levels while dysentery leaves him barely conscious. The camp's medical facilities consist of a single German doctor who dispenses aspirin and lectures about hygiene, but McNiece can see his friend slipping away. Other prisoners organize what help they can, sharing rations, taking turns sitting with Riggs during the night, maintaining quiet conversations that distract from the smell of sickness and the sound of labored breathing. During this period, McNiece notices changes in Kessler's behavior. The commandant appears for morning work details, looking haggard, his uniform less precise, his commands delivered with mechanical efficiency rather than theatrical cruelty. He still carries the rifle, still goes through the motions of intimidation and control, but something essential has shifted. The weapon seems heavier in his hands, more burden than advantage. One morning, McNiece catches Kessler staring at the rifle stock with an expression that might be regret. The German notices his attention and quickly resumes his authoritarian posture, but the moment lingers between them like smoke from a cigarette. Both men understand that their daily ritual serves needs, neither can openly acknowledge, McNiece's need to resist something he can control, and Kessler's need to maintain authority over something manageable while his larger world crumbles. The breaking point arrives when Kessler appears carrying the rifle but walks past McNiece toward Private Riggs, who's been running a fever for 3 days. The sight of that Mauser barrel moving toward his sick friend crystallizes something in McNiece's chest, a recognition that some lines can't be crossed, some choices can't be avoided, some moments demand more than stubborn endurance. Would you follow the orders exactly, or trust what your own eyes and instincts tell you in a moment like this? Comment which path you'd take, and share this episode with someone who loves real human stories from history. The rifle's barrel touches Private Riggs's temple with the cold precision of a medical instrument, but McNiece knows this isn't about healing. Kessler's voice carries across the work detail with practiced authority as he announces his intention to demonstrate proper respect for German discipline. Other prisoners freeze in their various tasks, repairing fence wire, hauling stones, scrubbing equipment, while the morning air fills with tension thick enough to choke on. Riggs trembles not from fear, but from illness, his fever-bright eyes struggling to focus on the weapon pressed against his skull. McNiece watches his friend's condition deteriorate in real time, the shallow breathing, the grey pallor, the way his hands shake while trying to maintain dignity in circumstances designed to strip it away. The sight triggers something deeper than anger in McNiece's chest, a recognition that this moment will define everything that comes after. Without conscious decision, McNiece steps forward and begins speaking to Kessler in clear, measured English. His voice carries across the compound with surprising gentleness as he describes the rifle's previous owner, probably someone's son, maybe someone's brother, definitely someone who deserved better than dying in a foreign hedgerow for politicians' ambitions. He suggests that using that weapon to terrorize sick prisoners dishonors whatever sacrifice that young German soldier made. The words aren't defiant or challenging, they're simply human, one soldier acknowledging another across the vast divide of war, captivity, and national allegiance. McNiece continues speaking, describing how the weight of killing changes a man, how that KAR98k connects everyone in this camp to choices they've made and prices they've paid. He doesn't apologize for his resistance or beg for mercy. Instead, he offers recognition of their shared burden. Other prisoners gather around, sensing that something fundamental is shifting in their small corner of the larger conflict. Guards maintain their positions, but seem uncertain about intervening in what has become less confrontation than conversation. The rifle remains pressed against Riggs's temple, but Kessler's finger moves away from the trigger guard as McNiece describes the sound steel makes when it gives way under explosive force, not unlike the sound a man's certainty makes when it finally breaks. Kessler listens without interrupting, his weathered face revealing nothing, while McNiece talks about bridges blown and roads held, about friends lost and enemies killed, about the difference between following orders and accepting responsibility for consequences that extend far beyond any single mission. The rifle seems to grow heavier in the German's hands as minutes stretch like hours, silence punctuated only by Riggs's labored breathing, and the distant sound of aircraft engines crossing the Austrian sky. The breakthrough comes when McNiece acknowledges that both he and Kessler understand how war reduces complex men to simple choices, how survival becomes the only currency that retains value when everything else gets stripped away. The KAR98k represents not German superiority or American defeat, but the terrible mathematics of violence that transforms young farmers into soldiers, demolition specialists into prisoners, and decent men into instruments of institutional cruelty. The silence stretches until Kessler slowly lowers the rifle, his movement deliberate and heavy with unspoken recognition. He stares at McNiece for what feels like hours, but probably lasts 30 seconds, then turns and walks away, taking the weapon with him. The daily ritual ends not with submission or victory, but with acknowledgement. Two soldiers recognizing the human cost of their war in a moment that transcends nationality, rank, and circumstance. But McNiece carries a secret he'll never share in official debriefs or casual conversations with fellow veterans. The moment he stepped forward to protect Riggs, His body betrayed him, with tremors so violent he worried his voice would crack, his knees would buckle, his carefully maintained composure would shatter completely. The legendary defiance that other prisoners admired was built on foundations of pure terror, not fear of death, but fear of failing the men who depended on his strength. During the sleepless nights that follow, McNiece relives not just that morning's confrontation, but every moment since his capture when he chose resistance over compliance. Each small act of defiance had been calculated not from courage, but from desperate recognition that surrendering his dignity would mean abandoning his responsibility to fellow prisoners. The KAR98k had become his measuring stick for how much a man can endure before breaking, but the real test was internal, maintaining leadership when leadership meant accepting isolation, criticism, and the constant possibility of fatal miscalculation. Private Riggs recovers slowly, his fever breaking 2 days after the confrontation. He never speaks directly about what happened, but McNiece catches him watching with new understanding during their quiet moments in the barracks. Other prisoners treat their sergeant differently too, not with increased awe or gratitude, but with the careful respect men show someone they've seen reveal his true weight under pressure. Kessler never brings the rifle to work details again. He continues his administrative duties with mechanical efficiency, but their personal dynamic shifts towards something approaching professional courtesy. During the camp's final weeks, McNiece sometimes catches the commandant staring across the compound with an expression that might be regret, or relief, or simple exhaustion. Both men seemed to understand that their daily ritual had served needs neither could openly acknowledge. McNiece's need to resist something he could control, and Kessler's need to maintain authority over something manageable while his larger world collapsed. The psychological aftermath proves more complex than anyone anticipated. McNiece discovers that standing up to systematic intimidation requires a different kind of strength than blowing bridges or leading demolition missions. The enemy isn't distant artillery or machine gun nests, but the gradual erosion of self-respect under conditions designed to reduce men to their most basic survival instincts. The real victory wasn't defeating Kessler, but preserving the capacity for human connection when circumstances encouraged brutalization and dehumanization. Spring arrives with American tanks on the horizon and German guards abandoning their posts in the chaos of general collapse. Liberation comes not as dramatic rescue, but as bureaucratic confusion. Allied officers with clipboards and translators, medical personnel checking for typhus and malnutrition, transportation coordinators trying to process hundreds of displaced prisoners while maintaining some semblance of military order. McNiece learns that Kessler left the rifle in his office with a note identifying its previous owner, Gefreiter Klaus Müller, aged 20, killed in action near Carentan. The weapon finds its way to McNiece's gear through circumstances no one explains, and he never questions. Holding it again after months of captivity, he's struck by how ordinary it feels. Just machined steel and seasoned wood, no different from thousands of similar rifles carried by young men who died too far from home. During the journey back to Allied lines, McNiece sits in the back of a transport truck, watching Austrian countryside roll past, while fellow ex-prisoners share plans for civilian life, families they'll contact, and jobs they hope to resume. He contributes to these conversations, but finds his thoughts returning to those morning work details, to the weight of Kessler's expectations, and to the moment when words proved more powerful than weapons in determining who remained human under inhuman circumstances. The official debriefing focuses on tactical intelligence, German guard routines, camp layout, prisoner treatment, and observations about enemy morale and supply conditions. McNiece provides the requested information with professional thoroughness, but he doesn't mention the daily confrontations with Kessler or the psychological dimensions of his resistance. Those details feel too personal for intelligence reports. too complex for simple categories of heroism and endurance. Private Riggs recovers fully, but carries his own quiet understanding of what happened during those final camp weeks. Years later, they'll exchange Christmas cards and occasional phone calls, but they never discuss the morning when a rifle pressed against one man's temple forced another to reveal the true foundations of his legendary defiance. Some experiences resist easy narration, existing instead as shared knowledge that requires no words. Decades later, sitting in an Oklahoma diner with a reporter asking about his war experiences, McNiece still carries a photograph of the KAR98k. He doesn't describe Kessler as evil or himself as heroic. Instead, he talks about how war reduces complex men to simple choices, how dignity becomes the only currency that retains value when everything else gets stripped away. The rifle taught him that resistance isn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it's about refusing to let circumstances destroy your capacity for human connection, even with men who carry weapons pointed at your friends' heads. If this story reminded you that behind every medal and mission report there's a human being carrying memories we'll never fully see, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to revisit history with us in the next story.